I also want to talk to you a little bit about, what Ukraine's strategy will be from here on. There are reports that have come in that Ukraine has rejected Russia's offer for talks in Belarus, in Minsk, in Belarus, because Ukraine sees Belarus as a nation that is complicit in this invasion that Russia has carried out. The question I want to ask you, as a member of parliament, on what terms would Ukraine want to negotiate with the Russians?
So we indeed did not agree to their suggestions of, what they call the peace talks, because they basically said this, that we are willing to negotiate as long as you surrender. Mm-hmm. That was their condition. So those were not peace negotiations, those were negotiations of Ukraine surrendering. That was not going to happen. We would have never agreed to that. Not after what they did. We are not giving up. So that was unacceptable. So it was not so much about the very fact that they suggested to conduct those negotiations, those talks in Minsk, as the conditions for those talks that were unacceptable to Ukraine, particularly because, primarily because it is just unacceptable for us overall, but also because we're kicking their asses here. So it's not like we are losing, we are actually winning. The Ukrainian army is actually stronger right now than the Russian army. We are actually kicking their asses. So they are scared to here. They are running out of supplies. Their soldiers are running out of food. Their soldiers are being killed in great numbers. So we have no, even militarily speaking, we have no reason to surrender. So the strategy right now is just to kick them out of the country. That is the only thing that we can do. And Ukrainian army is doing its best to make sure this is happening. It would be done faster, sooner, and with less casualties on the Ukrainian side, with the stronger Western support. So what we are asking now from the international audience is please do support Ukraine. We are willing to fight. We do understand you will not put your boots on the ground, but we do have enough of manpower here to defeat the Russians. We are asking you for ammunition to our soldiers. We are asking you for full-scale sanctions against Russia. Russia needs to understand that it cannot just start bombing another country just because it wants to, with no good reason, without any threat from our side. We have never threatened Russia ever in the last 30 years of our independence, but they just decided that they don't like the very fact that we exist as an independent state, and that is why they can bomb our capital and they can bomb our cities. That is unacceptable. They should be punished for that, so that no one else allows themselves to do the same. So we are asking for full trade embargo with Russia, because any trade with Russia right now, buying oil from Russia right now, is giving money to the Russian government to buy weapons with which they will continue to kill Ukrainian children. So that is something that we are asking of the international community to help with, because we, as I said, we are willing to fight. We are not giving up. We are actually kicking them very hardly here. They're all scared and terrified and don't know what to do. But we are asking to make sure that Russia is just running out of money and running out of political support from this damn war, so that they will surrender faster.
All right, that's a very optimistic view in terms of the resistance that the people of Ukraine have put forth so far. Another question that I need to ask you is, in terms of Russia's ability to carry out missile strikes and also bombings that we witnessed right from day one, has Ukraine, do you think, been able to blunt some of the air superiority that Russia had in fact established right from the beginning of the battle?
Russia does and indeed have a larger air fleet. But we also hit many of their targets. So we have taken down, from what I understand as of now, 17 Russian planes, and the same numbers for helicopters. So Ukrainian army, Ukrainian counter-air defense systems have actually worked, which we were not so sure about. So we did have our doubts as to whether that will be, whether that will work, because we did understand Russia does have superiority in the sky, but they actually failed to use that superiority to their advantage. So they were bad at strategizing. They were bad at understanding the situation on the ground. So again, 17 Russian planes have been taken down. Some of those planes were actually carrying Russian troops. So what their plan was, they were planning to take over those smaller military airports and to land troops on those airports north of Kiev, and then enter with those troops in Kiev. And why Blitzkrieg plan failed was because they failed to capture the airport, and they failed to land on the ground with their airplanes. And again, some of those airplanes with Russian troops have been shot down by Ukrainian counter-air defense systems. As of now, they are not winning in the air either. That is what I can say for the time being. But of course, and that's probably the third and biggest ask from Ukrainian side right now is to help us establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Because we are fighting on the ground as hard as we can, and Russian will never win on the ground here in Ukraine, but we do need support from the air, and we are asking the whole civilized world who does understand the atrocities of what is happening here in Ukraine is to provide us with no-fly zone, and then we shall just kick them out of Ukraine for good. So no-fly zone is extremely important right now to make sure that they stop bombing the cities at night or during the daytime, whatever. Then in this fair game, in a fair war, we shall actually be able to win. Because the Russians, Ukrainian side, we need to make sure that we are safe from the air strikes, which is hitting the civilian population here, and at the same time fight them on the ground. We are not hitting back. We are not hitting Russian civilian targets. But we did hit one of the airports, though, which was, I think, again, they didn't envision in their strategy. So we did hit one of the airports, which I think also prevented some of their plans being realized fully. So yeah, this is the situation on the ground. Please convey the message that we are asking for no-fly zone over Ukraine.
Ms. Sovsun, it's in fact difficult to see as to, how the West, of course, would agree to that, because a no-fly zone, the talk of a no-fly zone by Ukraine has been ongoing for quite some time. But the Western nations, especially the United States and other NATO nations, have said that that would put them in direct confrontation with Russia. Are you disappointed with the response of the United States and other NATO members in how they've helped Ukraine so far? Because when push comes to shove, Ukraine virtually is on its own in having to deal with the Russian onslaught.
We are disappointed. I would say that particularly day 2 into the attack, I was feeling this extreme anger, frankly speaking, towards our allies. I was thinking that I don't want to hear we are concerned, our prayers are with you, our words of solidarity are with the Ukrainian people from a single one Western leader who refuses to provide weapon to Ukraine. So I was feeling this like so much, like I don't want to hear you are concerned. I don't want to hear that you are praying for Ukraine. I want to hear that you are willing to provide us with weapons. I want to hear that you are willing to impose toughest sanctions possible onto Russia. And I want to hear that you are willing to impose the no-fly zone over Ukraine. So right now, I think this feeling is slightly different because, at least the West has agreed to cut Russia off from SWIFT, which was one of the major demands that we were voicing. But no-fly zone, of course, is problematic. But I will tell you this: if Russia is not stopped here in Ukraine, they will proceed to other countries. And that is something that the whole world needs to understand. They will proceed. They have already claimed that they want Poland, Hungary, and other Eastern European countries out of NATO. Russian spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that Finland should really be very careful and consider its relations with different blocs. Finland is a neutral state right now, but the Russians basically said that Finland is in danger as well. So there is no reason Russia will stop if and I don't believe this is going to happen, but if it will, win here in Ukraine. That's not going to happen, but just for the whole world to understand, if Russia destroys the whole of Ukraine and takes over us, they will proceed further. So right now, protecting Ukraine and supporting Ukraine is actually not just about Ukraine, but also about the whole world. So I do think that it's unavoidable. I do think that Russia wants conflict with NATO. And the question is just whether they will be strong enough to do so. So right now they are weak, their army is disorganized, and we can just finish this faster if we establish a no-fly zone.
Ms. Sovsun, my final question to you is, I know it's difficult to in fact foresee as to how all of this, of course, is going to end, but one day it will have to. The question that I want to ask you is, under what terms would Ukraine want to now negotiate with Russians to establish peace?
When they're out of Ukraine. That's as simple as that. We want them out of Ukraine for good. We are not stopping in anything else. It just makes no sense. After everything that happened, after them bombing our cities, we just need them out of the country. And then we shall just, close down this part of the story, and we shall proceed in our life independently, and they will figure out what they do next. But we are not willing to surrender. There is nothing they can offer to us except for full surrender on their side that we shall agree upon. The level of anger here in Ukraine is so big against them. Now, Ukrainian people who have been somewhat divided in their attitude towards NATO, towards Russia, and so on, they are all so much united right now. I'm getting messages from some of my friends, and they're saying, like, so there was this guy who was actually very supportive of Russia, and then he was saying that, oh, Russians are our friends, they will live together so much, we are, the Slavic people, and so on and so forth. And today this guy is signing up for territorial defense to fight against Russians. So right. this feeling of the very fact that Russia invaded Ukraine, that has made our geopolitical future extremely clear here in Ukraine. So we are only now, the question is only when that will happen. So we are not surrendering, we are not agreeing to anything else than just them getting out of our country.
Ms. Inna Sovsun, Member of Parliament from Ukraine, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us, and also telling us what life is like in the war zone that Ukraine has become. And hopefully all of this, of course, ends very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So that was Ms. Inna Sovsun, the Member of Parliament from Ukraine, who was talking to us, who was telling us about what life has been like ever since the invasion began. At this point of time, this is what Ukrainians, of course, claim, that the Russian onslaught in some ways has been slowed down. Remember, on the very first day when the fighting broke out, the Russian troops were said to be on the outskirts of the city of Kiev, but they seem to have made very little headway, and even in places where they're making some amount of headway, they seem to be progressing very slowly. And there are reports that have come in of Russian tanks running out of fuel. All of these, of course, will have to be independently verified, because at this point of time, what happens in a war zone, because of the very difficult situation of claims and counterclaims that are being made by both sides, it's difficult to independently establish in terms of how the war is going. But the fact is, the Russian war machine is not progressing with the same speed as it did on the first day. Russia still enjoys air superiority. That of course, is the trump card. That is how modern warfare works. If you can take control of the skies, you can bomb another nation at will. Russia still has that capacity. But on the ground, Ukrainians seem to be fighting back, and this is something which Vladimir Putin will, of course, be looking at very, very closely. Information that has just come in states that the Ukrainians have rejected an offer for talks in the capital of Belarus, in Minsk, because the Ukrainians see Belarus as a nation as having been complicit in the invasion of Ukraine. And it remains to be seen as to when the negotiations and under what circumstances and what conditions will these negotiations will take place, because the war will have to come to an end. But how soon will that be? And what would be the cost that would be paid by the people is, of course, the question that is being looked at here. The West, despite the talk, despite the diplomacy, and despite the number of whirlwind tours which many of these Western leaders made to capitals in Moscow, in some of these other countries, diplomacy has quite clearly failed. The United Nations has quite clearly failed in establishing peace and preventing conflict. And Ukraine wanted to join the NATO military alliance, but NATO is not coming to the rescue of Ukraine because it is officially not a part of the NATO military alliance. And now it is the people of Ukraine who've been left all alone to face the Russian war machine. These are some of the visuals from some of the areas. These are, for instance, from Luhansk, where you can look at the armor of the Russians there. And it's at this point of time difficult to independently establish as to which way the fighting is going. But what is quite clear is that Russia has not made the advance with the speed that it had been making on the first day. Meanwhile, this of course is the latest bit of information that we've been talking to you about, that Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected an offer for talks by the Russians in the Belarusian capital of Minsk. And Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the reason why he's rejected this offer for talks by the Russians in the capital city of Belarus is because he views Belarus as a nation that is complicit in the war that Russia has waged against Ukraine. Remember, the Russian troops in fact made their way into northern Ukraine from Belarus. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.